Is there an Asian penalty in college admissions? Perhaps. The Supreme Court of the United States is going to be deciding that next month. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Pamela M. Donnelly. I am a college access researcher, and I often track news not only in higher education itself, but also in legal actions that take place impacting student outcomes. And boy, is this a big one coming up with the SFFA versus Harvard case scheduled for resolution next month. Now, SFFA stands for Students for Fair Admissions. This all connects to what has historically been called affirmative action. Since 1965, when President Johnson issued an executive order prohibiting employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, and national origin by those organizations receiving federal contracts and subcontracts. Let's remember, although these universities are businesses, they all are very much dependent upon a very complex system of federal and state support to keep their budgets balanced. So that is something that is underpinning this. You know, related policies will seek to promote equal opportunity in education, employment, other areas by giving preferential treatment to historically marginalized groups. And, you know, the goal of affirmative action has always been to remedy past or present discrimination and to help create a level playing field for everyone, which sounds great, but this is where it gets kind of difficult. The supporters of affirmative action argue that it is necessary to address the deep-rooted inequities that still exist in American society. They cite the fact that minorities and women are significantly underrepresented in many areas, especially at the top level of corporate positions and selective universities and government jobs, et cetera. Although in the university system, it's interesting to note that more female applicants than male applicants have begun taking over those proportions. It's actually flipped in the last decade. Very interesting on that front. Opponents of affirmative action argue that this is a form of reverse discrimination. They say it unfairly disadvantages certain populations. They say it especially hurts white men. They also contend that it reinforces harmful stereotypes and undermines meritocracy. They're arguing that people should be hired only based on their abilities, nothing to do with race, gender, or anything else. So what do you think? You know, despite these arguments, affirmative action policies have been adopted by many employers, colleges, and other institutions throughout the U.S. SFFA maintain that racial classification violates the conclusion set in Brown v. Board of Ed. This was a huge case, and it rejected the idea that racial classifications should be allowed to influence educational opportunities. They go on to quote a lot of other cases. There's one called Grutter versus Bollinger, and there's one called Regents of the University of California versus Bakke, and those both concluded that some racial consideration in admissions criteria is necessary in order to achieve diversity. So you've got this whole sort of tension, and gosh, it kind of doesn't really surprise you when you think about the history of the United States, that it was built on a tremendous amount of racial inequity, marginalization, enslavement, all kinds of very concerning behaviors that are kind of coming to roost in our higher education system. So I've got a chart I'm going to share here. You know, the idea of this is going to be a modeling projection. This comes from Harvard. I will share the link that you'll be able to see here. This was from an amicus brief. And basically, the central consideration that's being asked about whether Harvard's race-conscious admissions process is in violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The chart that you're seeing here is really quite interesting. You know, a modeled projection maybe we should take with a grain of salt. We know that political and cultural and economic factors tend to constantly be in flux. They are, you know, very unpredictable factors, as we know. But take a look at that chart, and let's just think about the fact that the bottom line here is that the federal government doesn't always hold itself fully accountable for leveling the playing field that so many of us are out here fighting for. And so until they do, another little plot twist that has happened this last week is we all just found out that the Common Application, which is, the primary college app used for, hundreds of schools and by, tens of thousands of students, right, on the Common App, they're going to have the option to use race as a factor or not. And that is really interesting because I want to know, will the colleges divulge whether they are using race as a factor? Are they going to have their admissions officers know whether race has been indicated on the Common Application? And is that going to impact who gets in and who is waitlisted and who does not get in at all? Given everything that I have done for many, many years as an independent educational consultant, I can tell you that the essays tend to reveal quite a bit about the race or ethnicity of students anyway, because some of the most popular prompts have to do with talking about your personal narrative, your history, your story, how you came of age, what is your identity. It is possible to write a college admissions essay that doesn't kind of tip that information, but very often it's implied or even overtly stated in those essays. I've seen some college access colleagues share concerns that sometimes systemic barriers that we look at are conflating two things. They're conflating socioeconomic status with race or other identifiers. There can definitely be students of color who are rich or privileged, and there are plenty of kids growing up Asian or white or any other subgroup that are first generation trying to apply to college from their families. They grew up in maybe lower middle class or even, on free and reduced lunch. A lot of us are concerned about not just this case, but a precedent that could be maybe negatively impacting other populations as well. A lot of us are out here, we're fighting the good fight. We want more college access. And we can see the danger of entirely removing the use of diversity, equity, inclusion in admissions considerations. There are broad-reaching implications here that may even transcend race or ethnicity. And I'll just give you one case in point before I wrap. A whole bunch of students don't want to go to Florida anymore. And that is because there is a really hostile environment politically down there against LGBTQI plus students. And, whether you're revealing race, ethnicity, or something about your gender identity or your sexual identity or preference, this can impact opportunities academically in ways that we have to really decide as a society whether we feel that those are even factors that should be considered in a way that could hurt a student's opportunity. Do we have a meritocracy? What do you think? Do we want a meritocracy? These are really complex questions, and I'm excited to throw it out and to hear your thoughts. I just want to say that slippery slopes abound, but for those of us who are out here in the trenches every day, reading, studying, writing, analyzing, and caring deeply about bringing solutions to this problem, this is a big moment for U.S. college admissions. And I do see that there could be implications in the SFFA versus Harvard decision for other populations and the types of prejudices and biases that can get introduced if we're not vigilant and careful and holding our elected officials accountable, as well as hoping to see the kind of leadership from the United States Supreme Court that this country desperately needs. All right, well, I'll be watching from here. Until next time, take care.